Hi all, I have an absolutely amazing game to show you of Leela against Shredder 13, which is one of the top engines of the world, at least in the top 5 or 6 on some rating lists, and a past computer champion in its own right, so check out the wiki on Shredder. So let's see, Leela 11089 is playing against Shredder here in the Rapid Rumble, 15 minutes with a 5-second increment, stage 1 of the Chess.com Computer Championship. We have d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6. We go into the Queen's Gambit declined, Rogozin Vienna variation. So this bishop b4 here. Blacks capture the pawn and pin the knight. Bishop g5, white counter pins with a relative pin. That's an absolute pin, of course. c5, bishop takes c4, c takes, knight takes, and now black inflicts some structural damage, giving up that bishop. Now we have queen a5 hitting the bishop, hitting c3. This is very theoretical. Bishop b5 check interferes with the queen attacking the bishop. Bishop d7. Now bishop takes f6. Now if you're studying this variation, I'll throw in some bonus notes here. This is very topical. Here you might think, well, hold on, there's a check here. This is far too dangerous actually. This check, and it's a quick way of losing after rook c1. And can you guess, if I give you 5 seconds, white to play? Okay, rook c8 check, yeah, using that pin. And this is very punishing, as you could imagine. Okay, taking that rook. So basically, we follow the theoretical path here with g takes. Another option, you might think bishop takes here. Actually, white ends up significantly better. Well, for example, there, checkmate. But if black wants to stay on the board with g takes here, then again, this position after rook b1 is just better for white, actually. One thing to bear in mind, if black ever castles with the double pawns, that is a real liability position. White's also got the d-file here. This is very comfortable for white, this position. It's an advantage to white. So usually g takes is played, and the king's kind of cagey in the main variations, it seems. White takes on d7, knight takes. Where the black king parks is kept in suspense usually. Now in this game, this is quite novel, queen e5. The main variation appears to be a6. This is the main move in Chess-Based Live Book for those interested. For example, rook b1 here. This position where black doesn't castle, there was knight takes e6 potentially threatened there, by the way, because of the pin. So this position has been seen a lot before. The queen on h5 is challenged with queen e5 there, and it's a known position where knight f3 or f4 has been seen before in a few really high-level games. So a6 is the main move. So this is a bit of a novelty move, what was played, which was queen e5 immediately. Quite the novelty move. You might be thinking queen takes here. Again, this is, well, knight b5 is the engine approach, which actually doesn't seem to get anything. This is an engine line from Stockfish 9, for those interested. Knight takes, and the d7, I mean, this is good if black takes and nudges the queen, and then can win d7. But black is not obliged to do that, and this line is only good enough, it seems, for equality. So this is just, it's not much to write home about. So what usually happens on queen takes c3 is actually top super GMs in this position tend to play, let's have a look, queen takes c3. They tend to play, well, rook c1 has been played here, and then this kind of thing. This has been seen in Wang against Wei E, for example. That was a quick draw there. Oh no, not so quick, after rook takes d7. Yeah, that was an interesting game, which ended in perpetual there. So that's an example from high-level chess. So anyway, back to the game, queen e5. Now we're into quite unique territory. We have rook b1. There has been one game with queen a4, one game only, which ended in a draw. That's in the notes. Travadan 2-3-4-1 against Loisu 2-4-2-5 with Queen A4. So if you want to check the pin comment for that stem game. But other than that, very, very, very rare position. Knight C5. We have Rook B4, which indirectly defends E4. Now black castled here. This position, black castled, which is interesting. On Queen takes E4, then Knight takes E6, hitting the Queen. And if Queen takes, then we just play Rook E1, and the black king's still in the center. So this is pretty nasty, as you can imagine. So Rook B4, yeah, if Knight takes E4, then check, and then bang, Knight takes E6 check with Rook and Queen hitting the Knight is a big advantage to white. So yeah, Rook B4 seems to indirectly defend E4 sufficiently. Black castled, Rook E1, Rook FD8. Here, on Knight takes E4 here, as you might imagine, this is bad. Check, and then we just take here. Yeah, the king is a liability at the moment with this pawn on F6. So black has to be very careful. Rook E3 is played. Rook AC8, check. And now Queen E2. So threatening Rook G3, as I say, the king has to be very careful. King goes to H8. G3. And now this is a really critical point of the game structurally. And one must question structural moves of pawns which never go backwards. So they're extremely committal moves in that, you know, you have to live with them for the rest of the game. And Shredder 13 played E5. Now this does weaken F5 significantly, and a knight on F5 seems absolutely beautiful. What was the concern? I'm only speculating here, but in my analysis it seems, say Rook D7 E5, this position, for example, might be something for white to be pleased about. This variation. Yeah, there's some dangers here now on this diagonal pointing at the king. So for example, check. But this looks only even. So that wasn't really that convincing, actually, even if that happened. So what is the problem? Let's just go back here. So Rook D7. We can try Rook C4. This is to avoid that structurally committing move. This position also seems fairly even. Yeah, so actually, you know, after Rook D7, it does seem like a sensible alternative, really. So Stockfish 9 reckons, you know, Rook D7. Maybe it's the case that the Stockfish 9 programmers have made sure it's not committing to pawn moves which it might not understand too much the future implications of. Maybe they've built that into the heuristics. Yeah, it just seems as though this is okay potentially with F5. But anyway, in the game we have this hugely committal move, E5. We have H4 now. The queen goes to G6. Now knight F5. Now this knight, because the queen's on G6, by the way, there's no knight takes E4. That nudge was interesting because now there's knight E7 on any knight takes E4 to undermine the knight. So just to put that on the board, knight takes, any rook move taking the knight, then there's queen takes. But white would play knight E7 here, hitting the queen, and actually, yeah, taking on C8, for example, is even better. White has a big advantage. So the knight's not going anywhere. It's not tactically undermined here. In this line, we have Rook C7, Rook C4 now, because yeah, knight E7 has been stopped basically. So this actually might be on as a tactical threat, but now it's not. It's turned off. We have now B6 being played. So yeah, very, very interesting tactical position. And here, this is really remarkable already. Very remarkable. I mean, it's very, very... this is the reason I couldn't upload this game yesterday. I started checking around. I asked people with stronger computers than me to check this out coming up. Leela actually sacrificed the exchange. Rook takes c5. Now, what we do know, well, if you read Nimzovich, he's a great fan of blockading knights in front of double pawns. He's a big fan of that. He thinks that's one of the best forms of a blockade, a knight in front of double pawns in particular. It has got that, you know, stopping the king. It can't be frontally attacked. It can't be, you know, no rows or files can attack that knight that easily. We have actually rook takes c5. So this is a really interesting exchange sacrifice. On b takes c5, it seems rook d3, this position with rook d5 here, this could lead white to an advantage, for example like this, where that knight here is so strong in this climate of the position. These pawns are actually vulnerable because they've been split by b takes, and it seems white can just take time to fix them on dark squares and torture them, for example with queen d2. Now the queen's nannying the king here. There's always things like queen h6, so it can't really help that much. If the rook helps, then there's now d6, and then because of big other threats, if the rook comes back, then this is just a big advantage for white. So it's important, it seems, for black to keep the pawn structure intact, not to split these pawns, because they're helping each other, defend each other. So we have rook takes c5. And now h5, and here, yeah, this is where I did some observations about the game follow-up. I noticed in the game a dreaded form pawn was set up, and the game continuation is queen g8. But I thought actually queen g5, and this is where, you know, I was checking around, people really couldn't find for sure if white had an advantage here. So with current technology, I mean, this is one to make note of when you get a super duper powerful machine. Does white actually have something which wins by force eventually? It could involve a lot of subtleties, a lot of subtle moves, but apparently it seems that black might have enough to hold the position on current analysis, from what I've gathered so far. But anyway, this move was played, which allows rook d3 here. Just before we go into that, I'll just give you a sample of queen g5. Say queen g5, h6 here. This position actually, well, there is a form pawn. Actually, there is a form pawn here. This is not about the form pawn necessarily. This is about something else. I think, I mean, it doesn't seem as though this can be cracked that easily. So, okay, we'll go into the game anyway. So the queen in the game went to g8. And now rook d3 here. Queen f8, and now h6 here. We have the rook going back, and now rook d5. So Leela's celebrating that d5 outpost now. And you might also think, hang on, there's a pawn here as well. What is actually going on here? Well, rook takes d5 was played. On rook takes c3, it seems queen g4 is strong. Fran's thinking out immediately rook takes and queen g7 mate, for example. So say this, king g2, this position. Actually, even here on my machine, this looks to be about equal. It looks as though it might be possible. I think some people have found advantages after rook takes c3. So anyway, let's go with this. Rook takes, e takes, and now this position has rook takes c3 as well, but black actually played queen a3. Let's look at rook takes c3 here. I think I was able to rule this out with queen e4 and then queen h4. This scenario looks as though, this is very dangerous for black. Say black plays this, queen f3, d7 here, it gets a position which might actually be a bit zugzwangy, basically. You know, for example, this is winning for white. But here, if queen e7, then check and then mate. So yeah, this is an example where it gets terrible for black on rook takes c3 in this particular configuration. So we have actually queen a3 here. So the queen's obviously gone away from the king. Is this enough? Queen h5, rook f8. This is very different contortions to what we've seen now. Now queen f3. On queen h4, which is tempting, check bounces to queen g5, and that position actually is okay for white. It ends up being good for white. This example variation can be good for white, where you can see that the 2 pawns here in f7, you know, issue is very nice for white. Yeah, the 2 pawns are actually enough to give white a massive advantage, even if the queens come off. So we have queen f3. So not queen h4. So queen f3, check, and still this queen g5. And yeah, we've just seen some examples of these pawns being quite important, and they are in this position. c4. White is playing on both sides of the board with this exchange sack, and it would be great to create 2 connected passed pawns. But a barrier is the b6 pawn here to be tackled. Rook d8, d6. We have queen g6, and now, yeah, this is great play on this other side of the board to try and create 2 connected passed pawns. This is a key move, a4, to try and damage black's pawns over here, or encourage so this to move, so c5 can be played. Queen g5, yeah, it seems black's really stuck here. I think black's already gone wrong somehow. Yeah, it looks as though there is enough compensation here. After a5, yeah, black's getting in big trouble here. We have queen g6. On takes, this makes it too easy for white with c5, these 2 connected passed pawns. So this is just massive. c7 winning later, very soon, in fact. So queen g6, now queen e4, queen g5, and now queen b1. So holding f5 and hitting b6, and that will be hitting the rook if the queen's on b6. So the rook moves out of the way here to b8. There are, unfortunately, because of this fawn pawn, the fawn pawn's a real winner here. The knight could actually be sacked in some variations. One can imagine pretty easily. For example, because this move, rook b8, goes into that pin, which means now c5 is possible, and there is 2 connected passed pawns, basically. And you might think, well, here, the thing is, look at this, a takes. I think white can play queen takes b6 quite easily, because of the fawn pawn. Check. And mating because of the fawn pawn. Yeah. So basically, yeah, this play on both sides of the board is majestic. On one side, there's a beautiful Nimzovitchian knight, the ultimate blockader and the ultimate scenario for blockade. And on the other, Leela's following her own fetishes, her own preference fetish for connected passed pawns, which is after c5 that really happens. So there doesn't seem to be too much that black can do about the passed pawn scenarios here. Yeah, this is really fascinating stuff. So now there's just basically 2 connected passed pawns, massive, absolutely gigantic, winning. Queen d2, we have queen e4, rook f8, c7, queen d1, queen c6. White is able to herd these pawns, and the king isn't such a big deal. e4 interrupts the queen from f3. That's just taken. The knight is holding d6 here. But even white could have actually queened, because the check here, these checks actually run out after knight h4 with big advantage to white anyway. So yeah, it is pretty hopeless. But queen takes e4. Rook G8, Queen D4, yeah, threatening Queen F6 is totally, absolutely winning with the two connected passed pawns. Yep. Checkmate. But as I say, this is too much for my machine. Many big discussion yesterday about this. Could Black have maintained equality? Maybe. According to some deep stockfish analysis, there were some examples of Black maintaining equality. But in this practical time limit situation, this isn't an infinite analysis. This is still games with a time limit. Shredder just couldn't find, the way to keep equality. So a really practical, amazing exchange sacrifice, which was at least enough for a draw, but with winning prospects. So pretty fantastic stuff there from Leela. Okay, I hope you got something from this, even if just from the opening stuff. It's a very trendy line at Super GM level, so as well. Comments, questions, likes, shares, appreciated. Thanks so much.